Hey everyone! Today we're going to be talking about fragrance oils, and on the screen you're going to see a demo of a second set of resin soaps, Resin Design Soaps, and occasionally I will reference something that's going on the screen if I catch it, hopefully, and the rest is going to be me talking and a small little slideshow of some information for the fragrance oils. So you're going to see a couple of bottles, second set of bottles come up right there on the screen. Notice that one is really clear and one is yellowed. The clear one, well, first of all, they're the same fragrance from the same company. And the clear one is the older fragrance and the yellow is the newer one. So there's a few reasons that this can happen. One is that the manufacturer may have changed their formula. But more likely, because it is a sample, it probably sat around for a bit, or they just took less precautions than with the larger bottles of them, thinking they're going to just be used up quickly and sent out quickly. They probably have bigger turnover with sample fragrance oils because they run specials a lot on their samples, which makes it easy to try. But yeah. So I guess the whole point I'm saying is you want to make sure your fragrance oils aren't sitting in the sun. Some kind of protected place would be ideal. So in a minute, you're also going to see me just referencing the pipette. And all I'm pointing out there is that sometimes we grab a pipette and we're just, squeezing stuff in. And I basically don't use the pipette for measuring with this with a soap for fragrance oil because I'm usually using a weight. I put it on the scale. I use the pipette to deliver the amount I want, but I'm using the weight on the scale to judge that. I ended up using the pipette for measurement this time because my scale kind of shut off in the middle of what I was doing, so I didn't have the reference of what was in there. And that can happen too when your battery is getting low. So it's time for me to get new batteries. So let's talk about fragrance. We have, we go in the US and many other countries. We follow standards set in place by an organization called the International Fragrance Association. If you've heard people talking about IFRA, that's what they mean. IFRA is the acronym they use for that. So how do you know what IFRA says is okay to use? How do you know how much to put in? And how much do you know your soap base can hold? And so you're looking at skin safety, which is what IFRA determines. And you're also looking at what is logical for whatever product you're putting it in. Right now we're looking at soap, but I will reference a couple of other products that some of us might make because there is a difference. And yes, unfortunately, or fortunately for the consumer, you have to look at each individual fragrance because of the different constituents of each fragrance, the chemical makeup basically. They're going to be different and skin is going to react to it differently. If you have a fragrance oil with cinnamon oil in it or cinnamon resin or any type of molecule that has cinnamon in it, a lot of people are allergic to that and you might find some really bad skin irritation. So if you notice, most of the IFRA standards for a fragrance oil with cinnamon are pretty low for a reason. And so that's one of the reasons you really can't go over what they recommend. You can go under, and we'll talk a lot more about that later. You want to go under it in many cases because sometimes their maximums that they give are not necessarily maximums that make sense for what you're doing or what you're creating. So where do you find fragrances that are compliant with IFRA standards and provide the information that you need? I highly recommend looking for professional soap suppliers, professional fragrance oil companies that provide fragrance oil for bath and body products. Any of those professional companies are going to have the information that you need. May take a little finding it, but they should have it. If they don't have it, that's a problem, and most likely a company you do not want to purchase from, because they are either skirting laws or they're just not providing the information they're legally obligated to provide, which may mean their products contain things you don't want. There's a bunch. I'll list some in my description, but I'd like to say more what to avoid. I would not purchase my fragrance oils from Amazon, and I wouldn't purchase them from eBay, and I would not purchase them from your general craft stores or other types of hobby stores, etc. You may find some that have good quality, but so I'm not going to say never, ever, ever. Look at the material, look at where it comes from, and talk to the people who either own the store or perhaps, just one of the people who can help you find the information. If they can't help you find it, and if there's no website on the bottle where you can readily look it up and find it just while you're on your phone right there at the store, I would leave it there and go find it somewhere else. There aren't that many fragrances that are so wonderful and marvelous that you cannot find another company that makes something similar. Yes, it is going to cost you more in shipping, and but in the long run, it'll cost you less if you find a fragrance you really love and want to buy more of it. You're going to be buying in larger quantities and then paying less because of that. The other way it's going to cost you less is you're not going to end up with some kind of lawsuit or somebody suing you over an allergic reaction. So that's just my take on it and what I believe and how I create my soaps. I really kind of go overboard on being cautious with that. I have very sensitive skin, and so I have to make sure for my own safety that I don't use subpar products. So in a few minutes, I'm going to be bringing up some information, like a little mini slideshow. It's just going to show some information that you can find easily on the websites and how to find it. Some of these are just screenshots, and I've marked on some of them, and I have to spout out the information quickly because I didn't really give myself enough time. That's my own fault. But I think you can get the gist of it. Of course, you can always rewind and look more carefully at what I've posted on there. You can always ask me questions in the comments. If I leave something out or don't get to something, please ask me. I prefer it to be in the comments on the video. It's more helpful for me to find it rather than in a soap group where which I don't mind you commenting on those, but it's just easier if you're asking a question. I'm definitely going to see it quicker if it's on a video because I get notifications for those. So I'm just kind of giving myself that out because I'm sure I'm going to leave something out. There's a lot to say. Percentages, we'll talk about that in a minute, but the only reason I'm bringing that up is because you see me adding activated charcoal dispersed in glycerin. And when we start talking about percentages of things you can add to your soaps, additives will be another video coming down the road. I'm really not looking forward to doing that one. It's a little scary, controversial, etc. So hopefully I can do it some justice and still give you some basic guidelines. And then we're going to do a couple of other videos that are going to open up hopefully some discussion on additives and what you can or cannot add and why. And so anyway, with additives, it's not just what you can add or not add, it's how much. And part of that is when you go over a certain percentage of things you're adding to your soap, you get to a point where it's no longer soap. You have to adhere to whatever the manufacturer of your soap says you can add for the most part. you you may find some wiggle room with some things, but you want it to still be soap. So here you just see the additional information that's just directly under the product when you click on an individual product. The flash point is when it's the degrees that it's too high for you to add your fragrance oil. So you have to add it under that, and most of them are pretty high, so you have a good amount of wiggle room there. Soap is typically put at 5%. That's high. It's really high. And if you notice, body lotion is up at close to 10%. Pet spray at almost 16%. That's too much. So and here, right here, they certify the product is in compliance with IFRA. Maximum use for skin exposure level is the amount of fragrance that your skin can tolerate, not the amount that will work for your product or your base product. You might want to rewind that one and look a little more carefully. Some of these are just showing you things you might find that help you find the information. I'm circling that one because number 9 is important. Soap is always under number 9. The categories are numbered in any information coming from IFRA. But here, look at this. Baby products and products for your eyes are the maximum is 15%. That's too much. I wouldn't want to put a product with 15% fragrance oil near my eyes or on my face even. That kind of sensitive skin and sensitive area, it's just ridiculous that that's the recommendation, but it is. So that's why you don't go with the maximum. That's what they are legally allowed to say, is that maximum, according to their testing, that maximum is safe. It's not safe for me. So the maximum is your legal guideline, but common sense is going to be a better guideline. So some things you have to take into consideration. If you're adding 10% of a fragrance oil to a lotion recipe or even a lotion base that's pre-made, it's not going to remain a lotion. It's going to really throw off the balance of the emulsifier. So you don't want to add that much. You want to look at what your base product allows. And even then, and we'll talk about that a little later because I do have another couple of little screenshots that show some other information about that and where you find it. But speaking of where you find information, don't get lazy when it comes to research. I'm not trying to call anyone lazy, but I know as newer soap makers, you get so excited to make soap. It's an addiction. It's a very exciting time when you discover, for most people, I believe, that really love making melt and pour soap. It's so much fun. And overall, it can be pretty easy. But there's so much information and misinformation out there that you really do want to do your research. And that's the part you don't want to get lazy at. You want to Google. Don't just ask everybody. Yeah, you can ask in the soap groups, etc. But remember, not everyone on there is an expert, and there are different opinions, and there are different people who use different soap bases and use different products. So you can't know that they know what you're using, etc. So your research is the best way to handle things. And when I say research, I mean like not just one source. Look at multiple sources. Look at multiple people's points of view so you can make your best decision. Definitely look up examples of when you add too much of something or the wrong thing to soap. And when you see some physical representations of what can happen, I think it might help you understand that not everything that is said to be safe is. We'll do more of that in the additives video. I'm kind of digressing here. But the fragrance oil I used in this, I kind of fooled myself. And that's the reason I'm bringing up the diligence with research, is I researched this fragrance poorly. I got the fragrance because I was looking for a black raspberry vanilla that didn't contain vanillin or vanilla constituents in the fragrance, because I didn't want it to turn brown or even slightly tan or yellow. I wanted super clarity. So I found one and I misread. I looked at the information, but I was in such a hurry that I misread something. I was taken aback by the way they talk about their fragrance oil. They say skin safe, and then it says no. And then it says yes in parentheses. You'll see it in a second. It's going to pop up. It says yes in parentheses if you use it under 3.5%, which basically just means that it has a lower IFRA percentage. But they make it a policy within their company that anything that is below 5% is not going to be listed under their skin safe fragrance oils. So that's that's Aztec. And I mean, I'm fine with them doing whatever they need to do for their company, but it tricked me a little bit because I wasn't sure it was safe. And then I saw that it was, but the whole process of finding that made me miss an important fact for me. I like to use fragrances that are phthalate free. And I glanced at where it said phthalate free, no. And in my head, I saw that as phthalates. No, it didn't have phthalates, but it does. And as you see listed right here, I pointed to it. Boy, that went by quickly. It does have phthalates. And so I'm using something that I don't like to use. Well, it was too late by the time I made this soap. It's at a low enough rate that it is considered skin safe by IFRA, and I used it way below 3.5%. I typically use 1% and occasionally have doubled that to go to 2% if it's allowed within what the IFRA standards are. Which those are kind of in the middle of changing right now. I believe in 2023 they were starting some tightening up of the regulations, and so you're going to have to watch for that. I know the companies have a while to comply with that, and I don't know what that date is, but that's something to look into and research for yourself, because I haven't found a clear, concise collection of the information yet. If anyone else has, please note that in the comments, because I'd love to know exactly what is changing and when does it have to change by for what I'm purchasing. And the only information I've been able to find is somebody charging for a class on it. And I'm sorry, I don't have money for that. And I feel like that's something that's too important to gatekeep like that. I mean, that kind of information shouldn't be gatekept. And it probably isn't. It's probably somewhere very clearly marked that I'm just missing. So anyway, but I know we have time, so I didn't do that for this video. But I recommend you looking on your own to see any changes that are upcoming. There is an IFRA website, and you might be able to find it there. They are definitely giving lots of information about how their association runs and how they do their testing, etc., which is kind of cool. So if you want to look through that website and see what's there, you can just Google IFRA, and it's going to be somewhere on that first page of search results. So let's see, what am I leaving out? Basically, I'm not going to tell you what fragrances to choose because that's highly subjective. Everybody senses fragrances in a different way, and so I can't tell you what's good, what's bad. You have to let your nose do that, which is why I recommend buying samples, one of the reasons. Also, you can do your own testing as to what discolors and what works well in your soap bases, because I may not use the same soap base as you. Everybody has their own preferences for that as well. So within fragrances, what I recommend when you're doing sampling is I would sample a few different companies if you can, even if you have to spread that out over a few months. Don't forget that if you're new, you want to really research and practice and test, etc., for 6 months to a year before you begin selling products. So spread that out, try different companies, Don't purchase a larger amount of fragrance oil unless you've tested it and unless you know that it works for what you want it to work for and that you really love it. And even then, don't jump in whole hog. You probably won't use as much as you think you will. The fragrance oil for this soap that you see me making here on screen, the previous one was the black raspberry vanilla. This one is from Micas, which the reason I'm bringing this company into it is not a lot of people, well, a lot of candle makers know of it. I don't know if a lot of soap makers do. They are very expensive oils, which turns some people completely off when they see the prices. But please keep in mind, they are incredibly strong, at least most of them. There might be a few that are a little lighter. I think one that I noticed was lighter was the sheer vanilla and orchid or something like that. But most of the ones I've used are so strong that I even go under 1% for those. But they last really well in the soap. So when your soap is set up, I mean, Melt and Pour is known for retaining fragrance better than cold processed soap. But this one to me performs better than a lot. Some of the higher end fragrance oils, or even some of the just regular old soap supplier fragrance oils, you may have to stir longer than you think to get them stirred in. I purchase from such a variety because not any one company has all of the fragrances I like. So I get a few from Wholesale Supplies Plus. I get a few from Aztec. Some from Fragrance Buddy, which is kind of on the lower end of pricing if you're looking for a bargain, as is Aztec when you're purchasing samples. They have a real good deal for samples most of the time running. And I purchased some from Wellington. I purchased some from, oh goodness, my brain shut down. So I'll have to put the rest of what I use and some other recommended ones that I know are good because I know other soapers swear by their fragrances. And so I'm going to list them. They're known for quality products. So even if I haven't tried them, I trust that they're at least a quality product. Whether or not it's a good fragrance oil, again, is subjective because what you like, I might not like. So for me, a good rule of thumb, and I actually got this one from Anna at Koala Soaps. She recommends, she does about 5 milliliters, measuring from that because that is equal to about 1% for most fragrance oils. They do vary, and the larger batches that you make, the more important it is to weigh to weigh the fragrance oil into it. Because if you're off by just a little bit and then you multiply that by a large number, now you're going way over. So I always underestimate, for one thing, especially if I'm not measuring on my scale, which I usually am. But it's 0.1%. It's 0.16 ounces, which is approximately, it's actually a little bit more than 5 milliliters. It's or a teaspoon. So I will round down to 0.15 frequently. So if I'm doubling that, I end up with 0.3, which is still under really that 2%. Okay, so I'm back to this. I'm just showing IFRA data sheet. This is Micas' website. If you click on that, it's going to take you to the data sheet. But below this, it gives their recommendations. Their suggested level is 3 to 6%. But they do say to check the IFRA for the safe level. They show this here is their IFRA certificate listing. It is 4.1, which is quite a bit still, and much less than 6%, which was their part of their recommendation. Okay, real quick here, the questions and answers here. I found this in the questions and answers on Wholesale Supplies Plus. Their base can hold up to 6% additives, but they note to be very careful because oils are going to reduce lather. Stevenson's use up to 2% additives. And while I do I do like some of their bases. I'm definitely a Wholesale Supplies Plus person. The Crafter's Choice bases are my favorite, but I do occasionally use Stevenson's for some things. And they work really well for some people. With the kind of soaps I make, it's not quite as user-friendly for art soaps. But 2% is their top, and I usually don't go above 2%. Now, when I'm adding, you see the activated charcoal I just added. I mentioned that because I add that in glycerin. It's in glycerin, and I add about a teaspoon of that, sometimes a little bit more. But that together with my fragrance needs to be under 6%. Oils, adding oils, including fragrance oil, it is going to deplete the lather in any soap base. Too much will cut the lather. So you do want to experiment. If you want to experiment, you can experiment, but don't experiment with too much fragrance oil. That's something you do not want to mess with, to potentially cause somebody harm. So this Makesy oil fragrance, I kind of got off track here again, but this Makesy fragrance oil is called Salt Air and Honeydew, I think. It's definitely the one that has salt in it. Salt in the fragrance tide. It starts with that. And then honeydew. They have several different salt types, and I love them all. They are so fresh and clean. This one reminds me a little bit of coconut lime verbena, but it's saltier in a good way. It's a great fragrance. And like I said, it is so strong. I used less than 1%, and I did these soaps a while back, and they still smell amazing. I know I said fragrance oil is subjective, but I'm just saying that their products are a very high quality, and I'd give them a try. So if you have any questions about anything I've said, or if you notice something glaring that I left out, because I would not be surprised, what I wanted to point out real quick here as I'm cutting these is look at this soap now rather than in the end pictures, because the end pictures for this one didn't come out very well. I have a difficult time getting the Raindrop soaps to capture the depth and the 3D quality of the raindrops. Whereas here you can kind of see it already, and that's at a farther away distance, and haven't spritzed it or anything like that. You can see clearly it looks like a water droplet. But in the photos I took, it didn't do it. The crushed velvet soaps, it captures beautifully. So I'm really not sure what I'm doing wrong with lighting or with my camera, or well, my phone. It's not really, it's my camera phone. So something's not happening right with a few of my soaps, and I have to kind of figure out how to adjust that. But in the meantime, I just wanted you to have a peek at these while they're close up and see. I will be beveling these in just a second as well, so you'll get a chance to see them, and then I'll spritz them. And you can see clearly those raindrops. These are fun. If you have not seen it, I do have another video with the raindrop and not chiffon, crushed velvet techniques in these other colors that you're seeing in the background there, the green and brown and the blue, pink, and kind of a gold color. Which is this right here is what I was going for the first time with colors. I wanted it to be more like water, and the first one I did had a pink shift to it that I didn't realize would show up quite so pink or purple-ish. So that's one of the reasons I redid this. The other is I just was dying to do these in other colors. They're fun to make. They're really not that difficult. You just have to pay attention to, as usual, your temperature as you're pouring. I go more in detail with that in my first video. I will link that at the end, and I'm also going to link the beginners series, the beginners melt and pour series at the end of this video. And if you are a beginner, I highly recommend you look through those. I'm not finished with it yet, so not all of the information is there. As I said, I'm kind of been putting off the additives, because that's a little bit of a scary one. I'm actually probably going to break that one into about 3 videos. I'm going to start with what you can add to your soap. So as a beginner, I recommend with the that you start with the easiest things to do, the easiest things to add, the easiest way to learn about fragrance oils. Again, getting samples, trying different companies, and same with the soap base. You want to try a few different companies before you are married to one kind and never want to use another, just because you're not sure what the others can do. I used a base I didn't really care for, but I didn't know it until I tried to do some more complicated designs, and then I got frustrated seeing other people do neat designs that I could not do because of the way the soap base behaved. Again, it's nothing wrong with the soap base. It just doesn't work for what I did. So you see me comparing the first and second designs there. The green is the first one for this one, and there's the two new ones together. Let me know in the comments which ones you like better. Here's my awful picture of the raindrops. I really hope that you've learned something today. I hope I helped in some way. And let me know if you need more information or if you need to know where to find something. Do read the description, because there will be a lot of information in there as well. I really appreciate you taking the time to drop by, and I hope I can help you to become a better soap maker. Thank you so much, and have a great day. Bye-bye.